I'm David Gadarian, and this is The Flip Story. Today, we're talking about stories, specifically who gets to write yours. My guest today grew up in a story that felt like a massive contradiction. He had to navigate rather intense racial trauma, some religious guilt, some family dynamics that loved him, but also maybe misunderstood him. But instead of staying trapped in a character in someone else's messy draft, he chose to become the author of his own identity. He didn't just survive the noise, he organized the entire survival into a literal soundtrack. Johnzelle Anderson, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to get into it all. So I guess just to kind of get us kicked off, what are you up to right now? What's your day look like? What's a Tuesday in your universe look like? Just to kind of ground the audience in some of your reality.
Yeah. A typical Tuesday for me is waking up in the morning, getting my 6.5-year-old ready for school. She just finished up summer school, so she goes to a summer camp. Getting her ready for the day. Then I usually go for a run, do some yoga, and I read a lot. So I usually finish over 100 books a year. And so I get some reading in, do some writing, and then I am a full-time therapist. So I see clients in the afternoon, followed by picking up my daughter from school and, do dinner, bath time, that kind of thing. And then we get her to bed, and then I do some more reading. So that's about half the week. I'm a single dad. So we have 50-50. So that's about half the week. That's my typical day in the life with me.
Love it. All right. So that's, I think, a pretty good level set on the day in the life of Johnzelle. So I want to ask a couple questions there, but before we get there, I wanted to kind of maybe let's rewind to the beginning. So you got some, and by the way, congratulations on the book. We're going to get into the book and some of the themes on the book shortly on Mixtape, but maybe just to kind of talk through some of the journey that you've been on. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, which is in Southwest Virginia.
Okay. And, let's just talk about it. It sounds like you had an interesting childhood, parents that were kind of at opposite ends, and kind of how they think and how they approached, and I guess how they were present.
Mm-hmm, definitely. 1992, Roanoke, Virginia, also known as the Star City. There's a giant, illuminated star that sits on top of a mountain. That's kind of the claim to fame. And
okay.
So I am the product. Yeah, I am the product of a white mother and a Sierra Leonean West African father, and basically two opposites in many ways. And I come into the world mixed race Black person, and the part of the title of the book, Mixtape, has the word mixed in it. So that's a nod to what they called me growing up. So being Black, but being raised in whiteness. And then with that comes your typical coming of age things, but you also have understanding identity and, culture, and also navigating the meaning of family and relationships and that kind of thing. So at times it was kind of bewildering because there's myriad of experiences that I went through that kind of shaped me. But that was kind of the beginning. It was here I am. And then it's like, well, what does the world say I am? Who do I evolve to be? and who is the cast of characters that are responsible for getting me to where I need to go.
All right. Um, you said something kind of interesting, and it seems to be part of your core thesis is this idea of who does the world say I am? Seems like a theme that you've been really curious about. Um, and I guess let me ask you why. Why do you care what the world says you are? I mean, I know you care, but it's interesting. It seems to be a big driver for you.
Yeah. Uh, well, we were talking about the beginning. So in the beginning, and I'm a therapist, so I think of like development as well, right? Uh,
Right,
in an ideal world, you'll have your two parents who are responsible for kind of, ushering you into the world and guiding you and navigating, right? Um,
right,
well, one was absentee and one was volatile and, uh, you know, uh, complex as a human. And when you don't have your family of origin doing their part to kind of to be the village to raise you, um, to tell you who you are before you step into the world is going to kick in and it's going to say, well, this is what I see you as. So imagine being mixed race. You're lighter than the black people, but you're darker than the white people. You get the question of, well,
right,
what are you? Or you're not really black, or your mother's white. How is it? You're explaining your existence, and there's um, when you start interacting with peers and things like that, um, if you are not being guided into who you are, who you're intended to be, um, from the home, you have to kind of grasp at what and make sense of your world, in a different way. So that was kind of the beginning times. I would say later on,
right.
there's less emphasis
And
on,
to,
caring what the world thinks.
I think that's fascinating, right? So you know you're absolutely right. And when you're of a certain age, you don't have the constructs, so you're young, right? You're there's not, and if there's not enough community or enough family around to help guide it, and do you, I could see how that would be particularly challenging. So the world is pushing you in a lot of directions, especially at that age, and if you don't have some of that around you. Um, in terms of on the okay, so your mom is you grew up with your mom, I assume, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I was
And your
kind of raised
dad
by
was a little
my
bit
mom and my maternal grandmother.
okay, and they had their own issues. And then in terms of your on the other side with your dad, him, it sounds like he was not there a lot.
He
And
lived in the same city as me, yeah, but he wasn't
yeah,
very present.
and if you don't mind me asking a very specific question on that, did you find that you had in terms of being African American of a dad from actually Africa? Did you find that on the black side that some of the kids weren't necessarily as kind of you had a different experience of what blackness may have meant because you were there, or was it more culturally American, or was it just confusing?
I'll say a little bit of all of the above because,
Huh.
in a sense of younger me, saw myself as African American, more specifically, the emphasis on being mixed. My white caregivers would say, well, you're more white than you are black because you're being raised by white people, which was confusing, of course. Um, but then in, you know, spaces like school and stuff like that, I'm not telling people, oh, my father is from West Africa. I knew he was African, but then it was more so like, okay, I'm African American, I'm mixed. But then as I got older, the emphasis on, okay, this is the region. It's like more so tapping into the identity to be more specific. I'll say the African part was somewhat demonized by my white caregivers,
Hmm.
as foreign or and that, so the embracing of the African identity, what I didn't have a chance as a child because all I knew was the bad things that was said about my father. Um, so very confusing to say the least.
Okay. Yeah. No, it sounds like you. It does sound confusing. Just I could see being, you know, what up to age 10 and being just really pulled in a lot of areas. So okay, so you start to kind of make this pivot. You obviously you finish high school. You went to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Roanoke College, which
Okay.
is it's in Salem, Virginia, which is right next to Roanoke. So um, it it wasn't very far from my hometown at all.
Yeah, you live at home or did you live on campus?
I lived with my grandmother for 3 of the years, and then I lived in an apartment my last year.
Okay.
So
Um, and is this kind of the moment as you're kind of coming of age, you're going to college where you're starting to develop more maturity and more comfort with maybe exploring these issues without necessarily solving them, or did that happen like through high school? Where does this kind of where do you start to get into some of the themes that you obviously develop as an adult?
yeah, I would say that my awakening, if you will, of my Afrocentrism, if you will, started to
Yep.
develop in I was it was outside of grad school, um, shortly after like I got married and I was like developing my career as a therapist like in my residency. I was working at some like black owned counseling agencies, so I was more immersed with like black people, and like it was the first time where I was able to see like an emphasis on like cultural awareness. And
Right.
I was finally, I guess, safe to explore what does this mean, because my whole childhood was almost like an erasure of the blackness from my white caregivers. It was, there was a lot of ignorance. So being able to read on my own and to study and to explore and to um, just spend time around predominantly black spaces. That's why I say it's an awakening, because it was always there, but in my
Right.
coming of age, it wasn't safe to explore that, if you will.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think that's fascinating. Was it like a hot shot, like a real like bang, or was it a slow roll into kind of discovering this kind of journey, this awakening?
I think it ramped up um probably as my career started to develop, my confidence, and almost like unlearning a lot of the miseducation that I experienced like growing up. As you help
Mm-hmm.
other people do their unlearning and restructuring, you're also kind of tasked with doing it yourself. And my evolution as a person continued as I was working with other people. So it really, um, I will say, I wouldn't say there was a point where it really accelerated. It just came into like a knowing of this is who I am and this is what I'm interested in. And I'm gonna make up, or going to explore what wasn't shown to me. And I would say that the the culmination of that would have been me going to West Africa a series of 3 times in my early 30s,
Huh.
and seeing it for myself. Uh,
Did you go on those trips with your dad or on your own?
So I went on my own the first two times. I went to
Okay.
Ghana the first two times. Now, my father is from Sierra Leone. I went to
Yep.
Ghana because I wanted to choose a place in West Africa that was my own path to the motherland. Um, but after my second trip, I was like, I think I need to go to the place where it started. And so the third time, it was right after I got separated last year. Um, and I took my daughter with me. So it was really
Huh.
cool because I took my
Yep.
daughter to Sierra Leone, a place where my father never took me. But I was able to do something really beautiful in that my daughter doesn't have to wonder where she came from. I took her there. And then by doing that for my child, I feel like it was also an important part of my becoming and finding roots. And then after we visited Sierra Leone, my daughter actually turned 6 years old while we were there, which was pretty cool. And then we went over to Ghana again because that's kind of my chosen spot. So we did
Yeah.
Sierra Leone and Ghana. And so the third time I wasn't alone. I brought my daughter with me. So
Did you have an opportunity in Sierra Leone to see any of your dad's family?
so I don't have uh I don't know any of the people um
Okay.
directly. Mainly because I don't have a relationship with my father. The last time I saw
Right.
him, I mainly just asked like, where in Africa are you from? And then I heard, he told me Freetown, Sierra Leone. And when I did decide to go to Sierra Leone, I went to Freetown, Sierra Leone and explored and went on a tour and different things. So my journey was more um, connecting with roots, not from directly from the source, but I can go to the places um,
Yep.
and I can create experiences um, instead of waiting around for somebody to do it for me. So that was kind of the gist of that.
I love that. I like it a lot. So, just taking a half a step back, um, the journey into counseling and therapy, was that um, was that a calling for you, or was that something that you felt like you were curious about yourself? Like, how did you arrive at like this is going to be where I'm going to be next?
Mhm. I was going to be an elementary school teacher,
Okay,
and uh, I went to Roanoke College. I was minoring in elementary education. I majored in psychology. Because you couldn't major in education, you had to major in something else. So I was like, okay, major in psychology, minor in elementary education. I was supposed to be an elementary school teacher. I got to the internships and I was like, I don't want to work with kids for the rest of my life. So then that created a
fair.
crisis because I was like, well, I'm
Right.
in school to be a teacher, so what am I going to do? And at that time, I was also still like coming out of my traumatic childhood. So as space, I getting away from my upbringing and studying psychology, things were stirring around. It was like, oh wait, there's some identity, there's some psychological, there's some anxiety, there's some trauma here that's stirring up. I ended up getting diagnosed with panic disorder when I was in college, and I went to therapy for the first time. And so in the middle of being like, well, I'm not going to be a teacher, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have the psychology major. I went to therapy. I was like,
Huh.
okay, let me go to grad school and do this. And I went to grad school and I did this. So it's not
Love
as
it.
linear as it sounds, but that was kind of it. And if something helped me, why not do it and see where that goes? And I think a big part of my approach to therapy is um, knowing that we're all a series of stories and experiences. So having my own also helps me to be a better therapist.
Hmm. All right. So I think I got it. This is a pretty neat story. So you kind of do a bit of a rebuild in midstream. You have some crisis of kind of adult, not adult, but pre-adult. I guess we can call college
Mm-hmm.
pre-adult, right? We can say you're an
Mm-hmm.
adult in college, but
Adulting
kind
light.
of, sort of. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. It's adulting light. I'll go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I love this idea of, as you're starting to work with your clients, you're starting to also kind of sit on your own couch and interpret them for your own self. And it starts to build, and it's a neat build. And so, going to Ghana the first time, was that just in your own head, if you can recall? What was your mindset at that moment of, like, am I? Well, you tell me. What was the? I get the motivation, but was it scary? Was it exciting? Was it, because I can see the power of the journey and the reconnect. I'm just kind of curious at that first moment, as you're like, wow, I don't know. You tell me, because I think a lot of people have these same kind of moments in their life. May not be
Yeah.
getting on a plane, but there's this construct here. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Um, the book ends with my experiences of going to Ghana for the first time, and it's like a series of journal entries. But I think of, uh, you know, going to the slave castles on the coast and really connecting where the journey of the ancestors, the Black ancestors from this coast across that same Atlantic Ocean that borders my state, right? And knowing that I grew up in Virginia and I know what happened when they got here.
Right.
Um, but there was something that shifted in a sense of I am home. I belong here. And having not having had that in relationships, um, it was very powerful. It felt holistically like being welcomed home, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. Do you mind if I ask, when you arrived, did you cry?
I cried when I stood in the slave castles um, in Elmina, um,
Yeah.
in the dungeons, and I was wearing Crocs. I remember that, and they were talking about how kind of the blood and the human remains and all of that stuff is kind of baked into kind of the stone of the spaces,
Yep.
And like I took my Crocs off and I stood barefoot um, on the stone and feeling the weight in the presence. But then I was also in places like the site of where they, um, the enslaved they took their last bath before heading to the castles. And so like being in those spaces and standing in that cold water, and there's flakes of like gold in the river because it's rich, Ghana's rich in gold. So like the gold flakes and stuff like that, and really connecting and grounding with the spaces where um, you know, thinking of chattel slavery and like how much was stolen. But being there and seeing it from this perspective, it I'm still writing about it. I'm still processing it because it's sometimes hard to put to words. But I did shed some tears. I did feel like there was a sigh of relief, but also there's the unlearning part of me that was like, well, I don't deserve to be in nice places, like because of the, you know, kind of what I grew up with and the harm and the abuse, but also that knowing of that's exactly where I needed to be. So there was a lot of um there's a lot of emotions going through my mind at the same time.
That makes that tracks. And that good for you for really pushing yourself to go experience that on multiple levels. That's pretty wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the book, because I think that kind of leads us into what you wrote this book. Why don't you share what mixtape is, what motivated you to write it, and then we'll talk about on the other side, now that you've written it, and how does all that land and how does that feel? But I guess first, again, maybe let's just start with, what is the book?
Yeah. Well, I want to show the cover because you'll catch on to the fact that my favorite color is green if they're watching this on video, because
Yeah.
it literally matches my wall behind me. But Mixtape is a coming of age memoir where I had this idea because I love music, and I wanted, though I'm not a musician, I wanted to write a book, but I wanted it to be like a literary mixtape. So I wanted it to feel like the music is the framework and it is structured like a mixtape. So I call them tracks instead of chapters. And there's a real playlist that goes with it. So it's track 1 and track 5, right? And the track is the chapter title is the name of the track, and there's QR codes on the front of the book so you can listen along. Um,
Love it.
and I use elements like music notes to separate scenes. And I even, kind of similar to your show structure, I do like a fast forward and a rewind. And if I want to break the fourth wall to the reader, I'll do an interlude, right? Or I'll say interlude, and then I'll talk as my current self, and I'll illuminate something to kind of provide insight, but then snap back into the character of who I was at that time. I wanted to bring the elements of sound to telling my story because each track that I chose resonates with the scenes that I'm sharing in that particular section. So that's my story in a nutshell. And like I said, the double entendre with mixtape, as in the literal music component, but also it has the word mixed in it, which is a nod to my mixed race identity.
Love it. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took me a year and a half
Yep.
to write it, and then it took me another year and a half to get it published.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
3-year
So,
journey.
all right. I love it. And it sounds like you're working on number 2. If I read between the tea leaves, even though we're still in number
Yes.
1.
Number 2, 3, 4, and 5
Oh boy.
simultaneously. Yeah. Um,
I-
so, yeah. So I am working on other things as
yep.
well, writing
And
wise.
so you have this book, you spent a year and a half on it. We won't talk about the publishing side of it. Obviously, it's very much your story. Um, was it a cathartic experience, or was it more to be able to share with others and to help normalize kind of your experience? Is also often, I think you said, a series of stories that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're seeing it in your practice too, of to give people a sense of normalcy of some of the absurdity and the insanity. Is, well, it's, we all have our own stories.
Mm,
But I don't know, what was you tell me. You're, rather than me putting words in your mouth, we got
yeah.
you on the show. So
Yeah. I've been to a lot of therapy. So never trust a therapist who doesn't go to therapy, at least periodically. Um, I will
right.
say writing this book felt like therapy on steroids. It was very cathartic. It was very um, challenging. It was very fun. It was very freeing. It was very frustrating. It was a myriad of emotions. And what I ended up with was exactly what I needed for me at the time that the book was going to publication. Because what I ended up with was a thesis about unreciprocated relationships and the human desire for love, like, and understanding in a reciprocal way. And
Hmm.
the week that I was getting ready to submit it to the publisher to, continue the process, I was blindsided with the separation of my marriage. So
Oh,
I
jeez.
had this
Okay.
book about relationships and what I had been through. And I actually had the proof to myself of, you've been through so much, you're built for whatever comes your way. Um, and so by doing that work, I was also able to continue my healing journey despite being kind of caught off guard there.
Hmm. Amazing. Okay. So we're nearing kind of the end here. I do have a one more question for you, specific to you. Younger self, looking at today's Johnzelle, what would he be? Could he even contemplate who this guy is? Would he be, what would he be thinking? I guess it's an impossible question, but it's also, well, you wrote the whole book on it, so maybe you even covered it
Mhm.
in your book.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I conclude the book with a letter to myself.
Walked
And
right into that one.
yeah, yeah. I end the book with a letter to myself, and I'm talking to a younger me, and I am giving myself the things that I've learned through trial and error, you know. Um, and the younger me looking at me now would be inspired. The younger me who imagined who I would be at 34 doesn't even have the capacity to recognize how good it's going to get once you get through this.
Right.
Um,
Huh.
the younger me doesn't understand his magic yet. So I would tell him, it does get better and you're going to make it happen, which is also one of the tracks I use in the book, Make It Happen by Mariah Carey. So
Right.
that's the answer to that question.
Oh, man. Fantastic. Okay. Um, I do have a request. So I know I
Yes.
teed this up in our pre-interview. One of um, one of the features of our show, of my show, is the flip story recipe book. The idea is that others can kind of look in the book and say, that feels like a something I'm challenged with, and let me use that recipe to maybe help solve on that. So I'd love to get your take on a recipe for the flip story.
Okay. So my recipe is my model for connection. And I learned this through writing my story. So I talked about reciprocity and I talked about connection, right? And relationships. Every human is worthy of connection. We're wired that way. That could be broken down into love, like, and understanding. So by being human, we're worthy of love, like, and understanding. Reciprocity is not just two ways, it's three ways. So reciprocity and love, like, and understanding goes internal. So Johnzelle love, likes, and understands himself. Johnzelle has the capacity to love, like, and understand someone like David, right? And David on the outside has the capacity to love, like, and understand Johnzelle. Worthiness does not mean entitlement. A person is not entitled, or like you're not entitled to someone to love, like, and understand you, but you're worthy, meaning innately you are receptive and capable of. And it goes in those three directions: internal, external, and receiving. That is something I came to understand from writing this book. And the thing about my story is that when our relationship is, it will hurt you if it's unsustainable. So if you're love, liking, and understanding more than it's being given back, there's an imbalance. If you're being giving and receiving, but you're not doing it internally, something's going to be off. If one or more of those directions is off, you're going to have some problems. And that's where human suffering comes from. So that's my little recipe for connection.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well told. All right. This has been fantastic. Final question for you. How do people find you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, David. I really appreciate the time and talking with you. People can find me at johnzelle.co. So it's my first name, .co, C-O. And that is where you can find the book. All of the places where you can buy the book are there. It's available wherever you buy books online. As for keeping up with me, I am on Instagram at Johnzelle_. Same spelling of my name with an underscore. And I share book reviews of the things that I'm reading. There's cute pictures of my daughter on there, different things I'm doing to promote mixtape and memoir and stuff like that. So come say hey there. So yeah, johnzelle.co and at Johnzelle_ on Instagram.
All right. I'll put both of those links in the show notes too. And to your other comment, absolutely loved having you on the show. So thank you for coming. This has been awesome. It's been really neat. It's a really good story, and I thoroughly enjoyed hearing it, and I very much appreciate you sharing it. So,
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're gonna wrap it out. We'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.